showcasing gardens and nature in the valley and beyond. This is Let's Grow There, a WKBN Plus exclusive. Let's dig in. Hello and welcome to Let's Grow There. I'm your host, Laurel Stone. Today I am joined by Nick Deemer with The Plant Bar. Nick, go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Nick Deemer. My wife and I own The Plant Bar in Boardman on Market Street. We specialize in houseplants, tropicals, rares, exotics. If you find plants in pots, we can pot them there for you. If you have plants at home that need some help, feel free to bring them in. We can diagnose them, best recommendations, whatever they need. I studied horticulture at Kent State, and I've been growing plants for about 15 years or so. It's always an experience.
All right, Nick. So today we're here to talk all about houseplants. So let's start with some of the common areas where you can see plants. Some people want plants that tolerate low light. Other people have started toward the trend of putting plants in their bathroom that help with humidity. So go ahead and talk to me a little bit about different plants that do well in different locations.
Absolutely. One thing I try to do is find the right plant for the right person. Me, at this particular time in my life, I stopped bringing ferns home because I have a house, baby, business, wife. Ferns do take quite a bit of maintenance, watering, I should say, and I just don't have the time for that right now. So for me, it's not a good choice. Whereas other plants, if you like to let things kind of thrive on their own and thrive on neglect, I should say, things like snake plants, ZZ plants are very drought-tolerant plants. So it depends on your situation. If you want to put them in a bathroom or anything, things that like high humidity, calatheas, there's lots of different plants for the right situation.
So tell me something about that would do well in partial sunlight, because I have a lot of cats and they have a tendency to eat anything even if they shouldn't. So my light situation, I have to be careful because I can't put it by a window. I had a plant on a table one day. My cats climbed on the table to eat the plant. So the light situation, we have to be a little careful. So what can tolerate some light but not necessarily a ton?
Absolutely. I love it when people come in with a checklist of plants, of requirements, because that kind of narrows things down for me of like, hey, this would work for you. But you just described a low light plant, but also pet friendly. So if your friend does chew on it, it's not a trip to the vet. A great one would be calathea, more commonly known as like prayer plants. They're the ones, have you ever seen like the time-lapse videos of the plants moving around during the day? The leaves are all out, during the nighttime they fold up. That's where they get the name prayer plant. And that would be a great one for that scenario.
Now, in your camera shot here, I'm going to switch so the guests can see it. We have spider plants all over the desk because I have a spider plant. This one is from my house. The two next to you, a lot of my coworkers have plants in their office windows. Some of them are doing better than others. Mine's a little sad from the trip. And it also, you can see here, it has a lean. So this lean, my spider plant is by a window. And when I was sold this plant, I was told it would do well in low light situations. But this lean is because it's reaching for the light in my window. So is this something we could have?
So we had a little sneak peek before we turned the cameras on. It's in a very heavy water holding soil. So it is probably reaching for the light, but the reason why it's kind of flopping over is probably because it has root rot. Plants have strengths and weaknesses. Spider plants are very drought tolerant, so that being said, on the opposite side of it, their weakness is water. So the soil that it's in is essentially not letting the roots breathe. Roots need as much oxygen as they need water. So that might be why it's flopping. To kind of remedy that, I would suggest repotting it. It needs a better, well-draining soil. The roots want to breathe, and then it will kind of correct itself. Also, if you can rotate your plant every week or two to kind of get it to not stretch towards one direction in the window, that's something else you can do, but your situation in particular, it looks like a little bit of root rot.
We're going to have to fix that. We're going to repot after this. We're going to get some better dirt and hope he perks up a little bit.
I'm at the store until 7.
Now, another thing is the difference of lighting. So I've heard about putting plants in the bathrooms and in the shower that are good for humidity. What can you put in the bathroom? Because like a lot of bathrooms don't have windows and they're not getting natural lights. So what will do well to help suck out the humidity so it's not bad for our walls, but the plant will thrive too?
Actually, ferns would be a fantastic one. Ferns, the best way to grow plants is to mimic Mother Nature. So think about where ferns grow. They grow on the floor of the forest, so they get that filtered sun all day. They do not like sunlight. And they do like to be pretty moist and pretty consistently wet. That essentially describes humidity. So ferns would be a great one for that. Another one would be like air plants, bromeliads, even orchids, really. They don't really take a whole lot of sun. That's just a handful of plants you could do.
Now, I'm going to jump to some other varieties of plants. Succulents and cactuses, and along with air plants too, are all fairly common house plants. So give me some of the bullet points is if you want a succulent, if you want a cactus, how can we not kill them? Because I have, in fact, successfully killed cactuses and air plants. So let's work on that and help some people from my misfortune.
The number one downfall of cactus and succulents is too much love. They very much so thrive on neglect. Another big bullet point for cactus and succulents is they want direct sun. They want actual sunlight, as much sun as you can give them, absolutely blasting the plant. That's where they thrive. And I tell people it's either you have a fantastic place to grow cactus and succulents or you don't. I can grow them all day, no problem at the store, but my house is very shady. They just don't do well at my house.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to take a pause for a quick break, then we're going to come back and talk about some of the ways to ensure success of your plants inside. We'll be right back. Hello, and we are back. I am your host, Laurel Stone, with Nick Deemer. We're continuing our conversation about houseplants. So some of the things that we often experience are, 1, gnats, which is something we try to avoid. They're awful. They spread through your kitchen. So, Nick, I'm going to have you go ahead and tell people what they can do to avoid this problem.
No problem. So fungus gnats, essentially, they don't do any harm to the plant. They're more just a nuisance for us. They live and most of their life cycle takes place in wet organic matter, which is potting soil. The best way to avoid fungus gnats is good quality potting soil. If you are buying potting soil and it's stored outside and it's been rained on and the bag is suspiciously heavy, 9 out of 10 times there's usually already fungus gnats in there. Wherever there's water, things are going to grow. But that being said, a kind of soil that I use in the store, and we sell a product as well called Mosquito Bits. It's actually a bacteria. So what you do is it comes in these little granulars, kind of looks like oatmeal, and you take those and you soak them in a watering can for about 20 minutes or so. That inoculates the watering can with bacteria. You water your plants with it. The bacteria doesn't let the fungus gnat larvae develop. So cool thing about that is you're not using actual pesticides or crazy chemicals or anything like that. You're fighting bugs with bacteria. Another cool thing is after you use this product 3-4 times or so, and it establishes that bacteria colony that pretty much stays there forever.
And it doesn't hurt the plants.
Nope, doesn't hurt the plant. It's a bacteria. The only thing that hurts is fungus gnats. It's a really cool product. Some soils already have it inoculated into the soil, so it's a great product. We use it anytime I order new plants, and they always have fungus gnats. So it's a nice product to remedy over the time.
How much more effective is it than, say, the sticky traps that you can put in your pots that are supposed to catch the gnats?
So sticky traps, generally speaking, they're used for a monitoring system. It's not a solution. So a lot of growers will put them all around a greenhouse and to monitor what kind of bugs are flying around. And that's not just for fungus gnats. It could also be for whitefly, mealybugs, and mostly your flying insects. But it's more of a way to say, hey, something's going on. Let's nip this in the bud before it turns into an infestation.
Now, any other bug things we need to be worried about when bringing something into our house?
I mean, plants, no matter what, you're going to have bugs. Certain plants are more infamous for bugs. Things like citrus trees, they get all the bugs. Palms, they get all the bugs. Whereas things like spider plants, of course, they can get some bugs, but they're pretty on the bug side of things. They're not a very buggy plant. So certain things are more prone to pests and disease, where other things can be more clean, I suppose.
Now, your business, the Plant Bar, one of the things they advertise is that if someone comes in, you can help them diagnose a problem.
Mhm.
So when I saw you grab that spider plant, there's some brown tips on there and on my plant here too.
Yes.
So, what can we do about that? How concerned are we about something like that?
So the brown tips on plants, and I especially see it in Youngstown area. It's the I'll start off with the kinds of plants. Certain plants are salt sensitive. Essentially, things like kind of spider plants. Peace lilies is a big one. Calatheas. They and if you start to see browning on the tips of the leaves and it's kind of universal and all over the plant, that tells me it's not a bug or a fungus thing because bugs and fungus don't really have a pattern. Whereas if it is universal all over the plant, it's actually the quality of water. On terracottas, I don't know if I have any. See kind of this white marking on the bottom of the pot here?
Yeah.
Essentially, that is a mineral deposit. Now, that could be calcium, that could be dissolved solids, salts, stuff like that. But it's essentially a mineral slash salt buildup for the plant, and that's why you start to see the browning on the tips of the leaves.
Now, is that something we'd want to cut off? Is it fine? Do we not care? Would the browning hurt? Because spider plants have the little babies that come off of the tips. So if the tips are brown, you'd think that they wouldn't be able to produce those babies in more plants.
I wouldn't be concerned with it. It is common just for them. Whenever they do make babies, they actually put a sprout out more towards the center of the plant. It looks like it's coming off the tip of the leaves, but it'll put off like a long, stocky stem from the middle. But any brown that you see on the plant, any plant for that matter, is their dead cells. They can't turn green again. You're not going to hurt the plant by cutting them off.
Does it help them to cut it off? Does it save energy, like deadheading a flower, something like that?
Essentially, yes. For trimming this guy, it would be more of an aesthetic type of deal because the damage is done. It's already done compartmentalizing the damage, and that's where the brown is. That's where it stops. Whereas other things like trees, shrubs, you are saving it energy by speeding up the process of sealing the wound.
Now, going back to the topic of water, there's various ways you can do it. Some people bottom water their plants where, you fill, even if you plug your sink, put the plant in, let it absorb that way. Other people just traditionally pour some water in the top. And then there's also like plant stores that like the little delicate misters. So talk to me a little bit about the different methods and what works for certain plants.
I love bottom watering. Most of the things in our store we bottom water, just because we need them to suck up essentially as much water as they can. There's always exceptions with plants for things that like to be a little bit drier, things like alocasias, anthuriums. Those ones I actually top water because they don't need saturated whenever they want water. Things that can be like to be a little more on the dry side. And also it depends on your pot. Mostly in store we deal with like nursery pots. They're very, very easy to bottom water. Whereas I have this big giant spider plant in front of me that would be quite a task to bottom water it. So I would just top water this one. That being said, the theory and the science behind it is the more water and humidity you can keep off the leaves, the crown of the plant, the less disease and fungus you'll have. So there is pros and cons to top watering, bottom watering. They both have their good and bads. And you mentioned misting plants as well too. My favorite story and experience is I was notoriously bad at orchids. I killed dozens of them. Same thing with one of my favorite plants is a staghorn fern. It's called a staghorn fern, so I've always thought they like water. So actually, wife and I went down to Florida once upon a time and saw them growing natively, naturally, where they're just supposed to grow. And they just kind of and air plants as well too. They just kind of get stuck in the branches of trees. They get rained on. They just exist. So that's where more of like your misty type of deal is. And after I saw orchids growing where they're supposed to grow, air plants, I can grow them no problem. What I was doing is I was essentially drowning them. Have you ever heard of the, water your orchids with an ice cube type of deal?
I have.
So I tell people that's more of a unit of measurement. Everyone knows what an ice cube is, but if I tell you, give your plant 6-8 ounces of water, it's easier just to tell them give it 3 or 4 ice cubes. So that's kind of an easy way to say keep them on the dry side, I suppose. But even when you buy a lot of those plants, you know, you normally see orchids like grocery stores, stuff like that. They come in that sphagnum peat moss, which is the opposite of what they want. Peat moss is a sponge, it holds water. So most of the time, whenever you buy an orchid, it already has root rot or existing problems. Whereas orchids have those very thick roots, and they actually use those roots to anchor onto trees and grab onto trees. And then, of course, Florida, you know, it rains much more often, and then it dries out, and then it rains again. So they just kind of throw water on them, and they just kind of exist.
Now, going back to your mention of pots, my spider plant here it's just your traditional plastic pot, you know, that it comes in. Is there a benefit to having it in a clay terracotta pot, something like that instead? I heard that they can hold water better. So is that good or is that bad, depending on the plants?
I love I mean, of course, there's always exceptions for plants. Some things like plastic, some things like terracotta. But I love terracotta clay pots essentially because they are porous. They not only absorb water, but they also allow an oxygen exchange to the roots too, and that allows them to. Roots need as much oxygen as they do water. So with clay and terracotta, it'll actually take away some water whenever you do water it, but it'll also give it back. And also it will allow an oxygen exchange to the roots to kind of establish a better root system.
All right, so we're finishing up the end of this section here. Next, we're going to talk about pets and plants. But is there anything else? Give me the bullet points. Someone wants to have houseplants. What are the most important things they need to know?
Houseplants are the number one reason why people bring plants into the store for diagnosis or problems is too much love. Plants really don't take as much care and as maintenance as people may believe. I'd probably say 90% of the plants I have in the store, they only need watered maybe once every 10 days, 2 weeks or so. A lot of people think that, you know, that you need to water them every other day. There's hardly any plant that wants that much water. So let them dry out, and especially when it comes to growing plants indoors, it's all about potting soil. It's how well does it drain, how much water does it hold, what does my plant prefer.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to take a short break, and right after this, we'll talk about pets and your plants. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. I'm your host, Laurel Stone, with Nick Deemer from the Plant Bar. We've talked about some of the ways to keep your house plants alive, but there's something else important we need to discuss: pets and plants. There are some plants that are pet friendly, that if your pet consumes, it's okay, whereas other ones are toxic and very dangerous to your pets if they get a hold of them. And if you have cats like mine, they will do their best to get a hold of them, no matter where you put them. So it's really important to know what you can have and what you cannot have to make sure your pets are safe. So Nick, I'm going to let you take it off. First, talk to me about some of the plants that pets can eat that are safe.
Well, preferably, I would not have cat damage in any of my plants, but they are all creatures, and they get curious and interested sometimes. So we have a large pet-friendly section at the store, a lot of different trailing plants, vining plants. So we have a lot of upright bushy plants. There's a good option for pet-friendly plants. There's more than you would actually think. Also, most house plants are considered mildly toxic. So everyone hears about, you know, poinsettias are toxic for animals, and yes, they are. However, they would have to consume essentially like their body weight in poinsettias, and the poinsettias are gross. They're not going to eat that much poinsettias. Normally, it just ends up with vomiting or things like that. But there are a handful of plants, and I describe them as nuclear. Things like castor bean, a lot of alocasias. There are some that are bad, very bad, even for humans as well too. But another question I get is people think that they're not pet friendly plants. They think that they emit some kind of, I don't know what, but the pet would actually have to consume the plant to be affected by it. And speaking of this as well, a very common plant and one of the worst actually for cats is anything that's in the lily family. So Asiatic lilies, peace lilies, stuff like that. Even the pollen from the flower is enough to not so good for your pet. So we have all kinds of options for you as far as pet-friendly plants, and there's also deterrence, I would say. I grow cat grass as well too to give to my cat, so he has his own plant to chew on and drag around the kitchen. He loves it, and then it usually keeps him off of my plants for 2-3 months or so, and then he starts getting rowdy again, and then I bring him another cat grass. So that kind of works for me. The other side of that sword is if your pets don't mess with your plants, don't encourage it. Don't give them cat grass.
Now, for cat grass, you said you get him a new plant. Is this something that is it a sacrifice essentially? Will the cat grass die off with him eating it?
Yes, eventually they do just run out of energy. They're there to be mowed down. It just looks like little blades of grass, and my kitty loves it. I think it's the most adorable thing. He just goes and chomps on his grass, and he'll drag it around and leave a little trail of dirt with him. But it's better than him attacking my high dollar plants or larger plants that fall over and hit the ground and explode, and then you got a big mess to clean up. So chew on the grass, buddy.
Spider plants are okay for cats too, right?
What was that?
Spider plants. Cats can have spider plants, right?
So I find this very interesting, actually. Now the ASPCA has deemed them pet friendly, whereas even a couple years ago or so, they were not pet friendly. Fun fact about them, though, and this is maybe why they were considered mildly toxic, is for cats in particular, they are a hallucinogenic plant. They are now comparing it to like catnip. So my cat at home, my poor spider plant at home, he lets it grow up to maybe 6 to 8 inches or so, and he'll leave it alone for 6 months or so, and then he goes and I'll come back in the room and it's mowed down to a stump. So every 6 months or so, he goes on a journey and mows down his spider plant, and spider plant grows back no problem. He may have an upset tummy sometimes after that, but it's now classified as pet friendly.
So what are some other ones? You talked about ferns. What would happen if a cat would chew on a fern?
Actually, most of your ferns are pet friendly, believe it or not. Boston ferns, bird's nest fern, Korean rock ferns. I can go on with ferns. Most of them are actually pet friendly. Another thing too is, cats in particular, they're all creatures. They all have a mind of their own. They're all their own personality. Anything that has a grassy kind of leaf like this, game over for my cat. That is just something for him to chew on. He doesn't seem to mess with things with like wide, broad leaves. So that's kind of another thing I think about too. Like if I bring home a little baby air plant, it's a great cat toy. He just bats at him, plays with it, chews on it. He loves grassy kind of leaves, and I wonder if that has anything to do with why he likes cat grass so much as well too. He's like, oh, this is the stuff, and then he'll look at the spider plant and hey, that's kind of like grass, so.
Now, another common house plant are the pothos plants. Those ones are toxic, right? From what I read?
They are considered mildly toxic, yes.
So what would happen if your cat chewed on a couple leaves?
A couple leaves, they more than likely upset stomach, possibly throw up. Of course, the dose makes the poison. The more they eat, the more adverse side effects they're going to have. Whereas, say things like they could eat a chunk of pothos and be A-okay, probably not even a vet visit. Whereas things like alocasias, even if they eat one leaf, they're going to have a bad time. Plants can harm people and animals in different ways. There's usually a compound in there, whether it be poisonous or toxic, or the way that alocasias work, it has, I'm going to butcher the actual name of it, but I think silicate oxate crystals. And essentially what that is, it's like if they eat it, it's like chewing on fiberglass pretty much. And it takes hours and hours for you to actually get it out of your mouth. Water doesn't help, drinking doesn't help. It is essentially millions of tiny cuts in the mouth. So it's not essentially like a poison, but the mode of action for that is physical cuts, burning sensation type of deal. And then other plants work chemically.
Now, you were talking about the smells that some of them put off. Is there anything, moving on to humans, now that we've talked about our furry friends a little bit, tell me a little bit about how that affects us having plants in our house, the good, the bad, all of it.
People are connected to nature. It's anytime people see a green plant, it releases serotonin and releases dopamine, especially when you see a new leaf and everything like that. Humans are naturally connected to plants, and growing them inside is a great feeling, and it's very beneficial. They're air purifiers. They promote good growth. I love seeing people walk into the store for the first time and they just light up because it just looks like a jungle in there, and it's a great vibe. It's a great place to be, and people want to bring that feeling home with them as well too. Especially people coming back from vacation and stuff like that, because most of your houseplants, tropicals, they are tropical. I don't think there is a houseplant that actually came from Ohio, but when people come back from vacation from Florida, Hawaii, California, wherever, and they want to bring a piece of that back with them too. So, birds of paradise, ponytail palms, banana trees, stuff like that. Who doesn't want a big banana tree in their living room?
Now, are there any plants we shouldn't bring into our house that might be bad for us in close quarters?
No, I mean, there really isn't. Of course, there's always exceptions with plants. 99% of plants, they won't make air quality any worse or anything like that. The 0.1% I would refer to would be things like, and you're not going to grow these inside, but like skunk cabbage, they stink. Stinkhorns, they stink. So certain things like that, obviously you're not going to grow those inside.
So what you're saying
ultimately, it's really hard to find a bad plant.
So there is no argument in your opinion of why people shouldn't have houseplants. You're saying plants are good for a multitude of reasons.
Yes. That being said, there's always exceptions. Say if you were extremely immune compromised, stuff like that. I said earlier, anytime something gets wet, wherever there's water, things are going to grow. In potting soil, there is an ecosystem of bacteria and fungus as well too. So you're going to have spores and things like that. But a big thing with potting soil is using good bacteria. A lot of the soils, actually all the soils that I sell, they're already inoculated with good fungus, good bacteria, and that helps fight the bad fungus bacteria. So that it would be the only thing you may, if you are, extremely immune compromised, it's spores.
All right. Thank you very much, Nick.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you coming into the studio today. This is part of our series, Let's Grow There on WKBN+. I'm Laurel Stone. We'll see you next time.